Afternoon, everybody. So we are back. Myself from PRP Supplements and Phil, we're with you this afternoon on our regular little podcast slot. So we were, myself and Phil were having a chat this morning, actually. And the reason was that we're getting quite a lot of women in particular who are contacting us because they want to lose weight. They want to find out the best way of losing weight, and a lot of them actually are struggling to lose weight. And there seems to be a lot of them at the moment coming through to us. So we decided that would be a good subject for a short podcast this afternoon. So in particular, we're going to kind of narrow it down a little bit because there's such a big and wide area. Excuse the pun. So we were thinking of looking at why women gain weight during menopause in particular, and why during that period of their life cycle it is so hard to lose weight, even if they've lost weight, without any problems before. So why are they gaining weight during menopause, and why is it so hard to lose it during that time? So I'll hand that over to you, Phil.
Yeah, okay. Cheers, Charlotte. So it's a great question, and I have also been inundated over the last couple of years, and having first-hand experience of my wife going through the menopause now, it's only then you realize, what a traumatic period in a person's life it can genuinely be. Not everyone struggles massively, but I'm sure all females going through that period will go through some level of discomfort. And, my wife has been really, really slim all her life. And, in the last 18 months, through eating the same, probably eating less, to be honest with you, doing more exercise, and gaining the pounds. And that's when, when you hear these so-called sort of weight loss experts in just drop the calories and increase your exercise. Well, you say that to a menopausal woman, I can tell you now, she'll put you in a neck hold, yeah? And rightly so as well, because it's a hormonal change. It's a bit like, I've said this before, you can have a 12-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl who will usually have roughly around the same body fat percentage. And then when the young lady's going through, puberty, the same as the young lad, the female will go up to around 20% body fat, and the young lad will normally lose more body fat. Right. What's the difference? There's no difference in their calorific sort of intake. It's a hormonal fluctuation, where obviously the females are increasing quite significantly their estrogen levels, and the male is increasing their testosterone levels. And what I want to make it clear before we start, male and females, even though we're talking about the menopause, produce exactly the same amount, the same hormones, just in different quantities. Men even produce prolactin, which is, primarily for breast milk, but right. Many other factors, and that's important. So if you, from all the work that I've been doing over the years with females going through the peri and the menopause as well, it seems to be that the medical system has only one answer, and that's HRT. And what I've discovered is it's the shift in the ladies going through the menopause is far more than just a hormonal shift. Okay, as we age, there are many things which are starting to drop off a cliff, and I'm going to address some of them which are never really covered. I cover them a lot more in depth in the books I've written and in the courses I do, but I want to keep this really brief and straight to the point. Okay, so why do women gain weight during the menopause, and what can they do to prevent it from happening? Okay, the first thing I'm going to look at is digestive health, okay? And the reason why this is so important as well is as we age, because I want women to understand why they struggle to keep the weight off, okay? The first thing, even before looking at these slides, and I'll explain why I've got these slides up in a second, is that as we age, we have a diminished amount of hydrochloric acid production in the stomach, which then means that we have much more trouble breaking down protein, which we need those amino acids to actually make hormones, especially the peptide hormones, okay? things like growth hormone and thyroid hormone. So already there, so when I look at sort of blood and stool markers, I'm really, really a strong advocate. At what I've discovered, the health of the gastrointestinal tract will determine, I should say, the health of the host. And whether that's a menopausal woman or a young woman, it doesn't really matter, but it's massively overlooked. But as we age, we have much lower levels of hydrochloric acid, which means we have an inability to break down protein. And this is why I'm a huge believer of hydrochloric acid, HCl production, if you know you've got low levels. And the best way to do that is to get them tested. Now, what also happens as we age as well is that we normally also, and it's not just in aging, but I just want to throw a couple of curveballs in for people watching this, is that this sample here, that when I'm pointing to the the sort of these blood markers here, it's actually from a 47-year-old female who's perimenopause. She's starting to come through. Now, what is interesting with this is that with this particular female, she has a lot of inflammation. Can you see what I'm pointing in the arrow?
Yeah.
Okay, so she has a lot of inflammation in the bowels. In this particular case, she's also very sensitive to gluten. And I'm going to come on to that in a second because it's very, very interesting. Because what this lady has got as well is also Hashimoto's, which is an immune disorder where the immune system is attacking the thyroid gland. Okay, and you'll see what I'm getting to in a second. And also with this particular person as well, they're very, very low pancreatic sort of output on enzymes. So not only has this lady got very low HCl, which I'm not showing the marker yet because otherwise I'll be showing loads of markers, but she's also got very low pancreatic function. So she's struggling to break down protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And this marker here will indicate that it's exceptionally low. It should actually be over 500. Now she's got a gluten sensitivity. She's got lots of inflammation in the gut, and actually she's got exceptionally low immune function. But that's for another day. Now, what I also measured with this particular person as well was the gastrointestinal wall. She has a very, very leaky gut. And ironically, zonulin will only be elevated when there's gluten around. Now, the reason why I'm going on to this is that in this particular case, the rest of her thyroid hormones, like the TSH, it is elevated, but it would still be well within the norm. But even to a functional medical expert, that's still indicating hypothyroidism, but it would be passed on a medical panel as a normal thyroid. Now, what she's got, if you look down near the thyroid antibodies, they are very, very elevated. Okay, so with this particular lady, she hasn't got a problem with the thyroid gland. She's actually got a problem with the immune system attacking the thyroid gland. And from my research, that immune system is in full swing because of a very porous gut, a very leaky gut. And this person should go 100% gluten-free.
Yeah.
Now, and that's important because, as I said, people are not looking at digestion. And what I've also discovered as well, in fact, I should go onto this thing here as well, because whether you're a menopausal woman, and I'll go into much more in the menopause shortly, or somebody who's struggling with weight, the health of the gut, and you'll see this one in the top right here, where the intestines are there. What we know as well, in the bowels, depending on the level of Bacteroides to Firmicutes, which I'll mention, if you've got high levels of Firmicutes, which normally comes from a high-fat diet, okay, and you've got low levels of Bacteroides, you will gain more body fat even without consuming any extra calories. The Bacteroides seem to thrive much more on vegetation, and the Firmicutes, which make you fat, they thrive on a high-fat type diet, okay? So the reason why I'm putting this here is to show how important bowel health is, and gastrointestinal health is crucial. And as we age, we normally become more inefficient in those areas. Now, as we go through this now, what I also discovered when I'm looking at, blood and stool analysis, and this is so important for everyone, especially older people, because as we become older, as this gastrointestinal tract becomes more inefficient, we lose an ability then to absorb nutrients, okay? Now, what's also interesting, even just looking at vitamin D there, you'll see that vitamin D is, as we become age, our skin is more resistant against the sun at actually absorbing vitamin D. And also then if we take supplemental form of vitamin D, we also need a lot of pancreatic enzymes. Like we saw on the previous slide, the lady had very low levels of pancreatic enzymes to break down fat. And we also have much lower levels of bile production. So it's really hard, so you've got to be really on your A game. This is why I'm a strong advocate of having regular blood tests. And I'll go into vitamin D a bit more in a second from a weight loss perspective, because the reason why I'm showing these slides is when menopausal women are starting to pile the weight on, it is far more than simply a hormonal problem, okay? There are many, many factors at play why that older person is struggling with weight gain. Now, vitamin C, well, first of all, vitamin D, I'll come back to that in a second. We know, I should say, when it's in optimum ranges, that the vitamin D actually acts as a sensor to the body to release stored fat. It's really, really fascinating. The vitamin C, and you'll see in this, in fact, I don't know whether they're going to come up in a second. I do vitamin D testing all the time. I don't know where my little thing has gone. I probably didn't put on it. But the lowest I've seen, we are looking at the optimum levels of vitamin D are 50 nanograms per milliliter. That seems to be the sweet spot. I have multiple female clients, 45 plus, who are as low as 2. Now, when you're as low as 2, not only will you find it almost impossible to lose body fat, but you are much, much, much more susceptible to many other diseases, which I'll leave for another talk, okay? Vitamin C is also, this vitamin C level here, which is what I test for, and you can see how low it is. You want it to be 20 plus, if I'm honest with you, okay? This is somebody that's 1.5. Now, what I've discovered with vitamin C, the more toxic you are, the lower your vitamin C levels are. But from a fat perspective, vitamin C, when it's low, also signals to the body to store more fat. And vitamin D does the same when you're low in vitamin D. Now, when you get to this one here, so I'm just looking at 3 nutrients which are very commonly deficient in the menopausal female, okay? And that's why I'm looking at this, because this is never looked at. And I could give a whole seminar on each one of these nutrients, trust me. But then if you look at the bottom left here, I check also the ratio of omega-3 fatty acids to omega-6 fatty acids, okay? Now, what you will find in the West, you'll see the Western diet there, which is up here. We consume far more omega-6s than omega-3s. Now, what the hell has that got to do with weight loss? The more omega-6s that we have in relation to omega-3s, the more the body will store fat and the more chronically inflamed the body becomes, okay? So a female going through the menopause needs to have optimum amounts of vitamin D, optimum amounts of vitamin C, and optimum omega-3 fatty acids. And this is a 51-year-old female, and you'll see here, this should be 8 and above. It's well below. And actually, when it's that low as well, and you get in up to the 50-plus age group, you're much more likely to have heart disease problems. And you'll see also then the omega-6 fatty acids, the arachidonic acid here, I want to keep this really, is super high. And this woman really had a massive weight issue, okay? So this is...
And that's the reason we just supplement with omega-3, isn't it? Because generally your omega-6 intake is too high or certainly high enough anyway.
Well, it's around 20 to 1. Okay, so if I go back here, if you see the Western diet there, you look, and we evolved on a ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s of around 2 to 1.
Yeah.
In the West, it's on average around 20 omega-6s, which are coming from vegetable oils, which are not vegetable oils, they seed oils, okay, primarily.
Yeah.
Meats, milk, and eggs, okay, those are high in omega-6s. So the omega-6s are there, and the omega-3s are only coming through fatty fish of any reasonable quality. And you don't see anyone really eating any amounts. This is why I'm a massive, massive advocate of fish oils, and especially ours, because I know they genuinely are the best. In fact, this is the vitamin D level of a lady that I did. I think she was mid-40s. you can see the 2.6 there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you can't even understand how massively problematic that is, not only from a weight loss perspective, but also for the potentiation of multiple sclerosis, for cancer. There's many other diseases that will be so relevant for, and the same as the other three. So it's key to keep these nutrients in optimum amounts. And just to get people just thinking a little bit on vitamin D, the research is showing, for example, let me just move some of these, what vitamin D does. It does so much, but from a weight loss perspective, it actually keeps the fat cells, which is this adipocyte here, it signals it to release its fat. Now, as I said, so I want people, menopausal females, to really understand that as they're gaining weight through the menopause, yeah, there's no doubt the hormones are playing a massive part, which I'm going to look at in a second, but so are these nutrient deficiencies, so is the health of the gastrointestinal tract, okay? Obesity and weight gain is not a singular thing. It's not just a hormonal thing, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Way more than that. And as I said, the sweet spot for vitamin D, you're looking, and we know this from I've done extensive research, you want to be over, this is UK, you want to be you're looking at about 50 nanograms per milliliter. That's where the real sweet spot, that's where the magic really takes place. Now, I've written extensively on hormones for weight loss, performance, and mental health, etc. And, there's the book I wrote a few years ago, which is really, I mean, the vast majority of that book is on hormones. It's 730 pages. And what I discovered, and a lot more recently since I've been doing some extensive checks, is if you look in this very interesting chart here, okay, and I now check all of these apart from glucagon. If these hormones, so the reason why I'm showing this is the female going through the menopause will think it's all about estrogen. Actually, progesterone should be on you as well, but it's not. As females go through the menopause, they normally become more estrogen dominant, which I'll talk about in a second. But you look here, there are so many hormones which are involved in the...
Yeah, you wouldn't know about any of those.
No, and I test all these now. And I tell you what people don't know, this hormone here, for example, leptin, is probably the most important hormone for the body to control its weight. And leptin is a hormone which is actually produced by fat cells to signal to the brain, right, to increase your metabolic rate if you've eaten too much food, or to decrease your metabolic rate if you haven't eaten enough food. It's almost like a metabolic thermostat, okay? Because we are meant to have a set weight. Humans are not meant to be obese, even though we are very, very efficient at storing fat, and in fact, and we're very inefficient at burning fat. Why? Because from an evolutionary perspective, we never had a luxury of having a constant supply of calories.
Yeah.
So, the problem that we've got now, which is very interesting, even just going on leptin there, what we've discovered, obese people have got much higher leptin levels than thin people. Why is that the case? They become resistant, okay? The leptin is no longer telling the brain to burn the fat. Now, what is interesting from my research, I discovered there are three real major players in this. Gluten is one of the players. It actually latches onto leptin and prevents leptin from going into the brain. So when it's not in there, you could have eaten a big meal. When you're leptin resistant, you're still friggin' hungry. You still want more food. As you gain more fat, you still want more food because that signal is no longer telling the brain. Now, what is also interesting, sleep deprivation is a very strong potentiator of leptin as well, and also inflammation. The more inflammation you have in the body, there is a marker called C-reactive protein, which I do look at, then that also hijacks leptin and stops the signal going to the brain. So that's the person who can't stop eating. And they know they don't need any more food. So, that's really important. Now, from a fat perspective, this is why the females, as they go in through the menopause, and not necessarily the menopause as well, even if they're having struggle with hormonal issues. First of all, I want you to look here. If you look at the age, what happens is, as the females getting older, the estrogen levels are definitely declining, but nowhere near as much as the progesterone. The progesterone levels literally virtually nothing, which I'll which I know from all the tests, and I'll show you some examples. What would that mean from a fat storage perspective? If we look at this cell over here, you'll see here that estrogen stimulates alpha receptors, which are found primarily in the hips and the bum, okay, in females. Now, estrogen is signaling in those cells to store. Now, what progesterone does, and a few other hormones I have to say, it stimulates them to release the fat, okay? The problem with the older female, and I should say also the younger female who's overweight as well, especially as you get older, you can see this massive drop-off for the female, okay, is that the progesterone is virtually non-existent. Even though even though the estrogen is still low, they're still what is known as estrogen dominant, okay?
So you'd still tend to see that drop in progesterone in a younger female who's overweight as well as a woman who's
you will
at
do,
menopause.
Yeah, and when you know how to read blood chemistry analysis, you can see it a mile off on if the lady knows when she's what part of the cycle that she is when she has her menopause. You can see how imbalanced the hormones are. You know, so you can see whether she's really she should be producing more progesterone in the last 14 days of the cycle. If the progesterone levels are still really low in comparison to estrogen, then you know she's estrogen dominant. And they're the ones that will store all their weight on their hips and their arse. And from an evolutionary perspective, that's what nature wanted, but obviously not so much as what we carry.
Yeah, not so extreme,
because we're in such an estrogen dominant environment, okay? But there's a big player missing here, okay? And the big player is testosterone. Females, the testosterone levels is the first real steroid hormone to drop off the cliff as you get older. By the time you get to 40, it really is in free fall. Now, what is very interesting with testosterone from a female perspective, when they're really low in that, there's two things that are going to happen, okay? They will accumulate a lot of weight on the abdominal region, okay? And the reason why is that cortisol normally goes up, and I'll talk a bit more about that in the end, and testosterone goes down. So when you're estrogen dominant and you've got low progesterone and you now got low testosterone, that's why females, you'll hear a lot of females going through the menopause who will say, I've never carried weight in my belly before, but now I'm starting to really carry it. So there's two things, I should say there's three hormones which are really involved in that area. It's testosterone, it's cortisol, testosterone, cortisol, and growth hormone, which I'll look at shortly. So this is why I look at cortisol levels, and I'll show some ways shortly now in how we can prevent this downslide. And this is where it gets really excited. This is the inevitable part of aging, okay? If you've got any questions, just fire away, okay?
No, I'm just following what you're saying. I might have some questions after, just in a sec.
Yeah, and testosterone is never really looked at in the HRT community because they seem to be so obsessed with progesterone and estrogen. But
I think quite often as well, testosterone is always just so much more associated with men, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And females will produce males will produce around 7 milligrams a day, and a female you're in around 300 micrograms. So that's why it's so difficult for females to put testosterone to put muscle on. But what will happen, as I'll show shortly, if you're a female and you're low in testosterone and you're low in progesterone and you're low in estrogen, I see this every day, and you're trying to train your ass off every day in the gym. You train, but you see zero results, okay?
Presumably then you're going to feel awful as well.
Yeah, well, very good point, because the testosterone, the hormones have a huge effect on our mood, and 98% of the brain actually communicate via hormones, and there's only 2% via neurotransmitters. Why is that important? Because if a female's feeling depressed, they'll be put on antidepressants. You'll normally find the depression is because of hormonal imbalances, and I've done a whole seminar on why that's the case. Now, just briefly going back to testosterone, we look at this study here. This was in the Clinical of Endocrinology, and what they discovered, they were just given small amounts of synthetic testosterone, but I'm going to tell you in a second how to increase it, in overweight females, and they lost more body fat and subcutaneous fat than those who were on the placebo. Now, those women taking testosterone, they'd lost twice the body fat and gained 6 pounds of lean muscle mass. And this was on a low-calorie diet. They didn't change their exercise habits, okay? Now that showed you
So they all followed the same diet?
Yeah, they followed the same low-calorie diet. They didn't have any changes. You can see it in their exercise habits.
Yeah.
This was after 9 months. So it was a fairly long sort of study. And what is very interesting with this is that if you look at these markers, in this particular lady, for example, this is a 54-year-old who's gone through the menopause. This is somebody, I can tell you now, they can go to the gym 6 times a week. They can employ me as a trainer, and they will still look the same.
Yeah.
Nothing going to happen for 2 reasons. A, the testosterone is so low.
It's too low.
Yeah, but B, and this is what nature's got a very wicked sense of humor, because this hormone here, sex hormone binding globulin, actually binds testosterone, okay? And it stops testosterone from going into the cells. So not only has this person got
okay,
no testosterone,
but that's doing too good a job. So anything that it has got, it's stopping getting into the cells anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And I've researched extensively on how to lower sex hormone binding globulin and how to increase testosterone, and we'll have a little look at that in a bit as well now. So this is another example of that. So this is a 47-year-old female who's perimenopause, and if we look here, like this, we haven't spoken about DHA, but DHA is the most abundant steroid in the human body. As you age, like all our muscle building, fat loss hormones, they decline, and all our fat storing hormones, they increase. And this is another reason. But the beauty of all this is that when you really know how to play this game, yeah, we are going to decline as we age. I'm 53, but I know what I need to eat, how I need to drink.
Yeah.
I'm going to go into some other things in a second, and what supplements really do inhibit the decline on a rapid rate, okay?
So if we look after ourselves as women, as we approach sort of perimenopause, menopause, we can help to avoid this kind of jumping off a cliff level of the hormones, but we can certainly help to avoid the weight gain as well.
Massively. And I'm going to show shortly, which is also massively overlooked, is the effect that toxins are having on the inability for females to lose weight, and especially as they get older, because they not only do they have this significant hormonal decline as we age anyway, and they have that signal to store fat and not to build fat. When you are very toxic, and I'll speak about it briefly, the body will always signal, the more toxins the body has, the more the body will lay down fat, okay? And that's without consuming any calories. And the reason why I'm saying that, females will put on average, almost 6 pounds of cosmetics onto their skin every year, okay? They will absorb around 60% of what you put onto the skin. It's going straight into the bloodstream. These chemicals are what is known as endocrine disrupting chemicals. They interfere with the way the hormones work on the cell membranes. So not only are your hormones falling off a cliff as you age, but we have a lot of these toxins from, whether it's the water supply, our dental materials, the stuff that we rub in on our skins. And I discovered this over 15 years ago when I worked in professional sport, and I was looking at, I spent a whole year doing body fat composition testing on 130 players from 3 different teams at the highest level of sport. And some of those players were gaining fat as the season went on, and they were all on, optimum diet plans, optimum supplement plans, and they were training their butts off. They had to, why were they gaining this weight? And I started looking into shampoos, deodorants and stuff like that, all the different moisturizers they were rubbing on their skin, and you look at women, they're going to do a lot more than the men.
They use far more products generally.
Yeah, they will do. So it's a huge problem. But with this female, she's 200% below what she should be on DHEA, which is one of the primary steroid hormones for fat loss. The progesterone levels are 217% lower, and the estrogen is 348. So she'll be very insulin resistant, and she's 513% lower on the testosterone than what we would class as optimum. So this is somebody that is programmed to store, store fat. Yeah. Okay. Now, what is also interesting as we age, and anybody going through the menopause, will tell you how much they struggle with sleep. Well, the vast majority anyway, they really do. And as we age, you'll see, well, first of all, the growth hormone starts to fall off a cliff, okay?
Yeah.
When the growth hormone is getting lower and lower, you will accumulate the vast majority of your weight on your belly, okay? Now, there's multiple ways that we can inhibit this decline. There are certain, I'll go into in a second, because melatonin and growth hormone, they almost work synergistically together. Now, what's interesting is the growth hormone's dropping, and you'll also see here with melatonin, by the time you get to 50, melatonin is our sleep hormone, but it's much more than that as well. For females, it's one of the most important hormones for the prevention of breast cancer. Melatonin, when it's in an optimum ratio, will also increase our brown fat, which is fat within the organism, which burns fat when you sleep. When you low this fat when you low in melatonin, it doesn't get stimulated. Melatonin is a massively overlooked hormone in the decline of human health. I personally take 10 milligrams of it a day at nighttime and so does my wife.
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen here? And so why are we having so we naturally have a low decline in melatonin as we age, same as growth hormone. But the problem that we have in our day and age today is that what interferes with the growth hormone and the melatonin is light. Okay. So,
okay, I was going to ask you why, if it's a natural decline, is it causing such a problem?
Well, yeah, exactly. But now we're accelerating this issue. And this is the same, I have to say as well, in all age groups as well. It's more prevalent in the older age group because already we're falling off a cliff anyway. So if you're on your laptop or you're on your tablet or you're on your iPhones, yeah, and you got light in the room and you got electrical devices in the room.
Yeah.
And, we are living in an era, I have to say, from all the research I've done, which has been quite extensive over 30 years, the introduction of artificial light has been actually one of the most devastating things for human health. Previously to that, we basically evolved around, obviously sunrise and dawn. Yeah. And that's,
yeah. And seasonal as well.
Exactly.
So
yes.
in the wintertime, there was less sunlight.
Exactly. And we would sleep more. And in the winter, we are more effective at storing fat.
Yeah. And I suppose that season would lead us to be more kind of restful during winter and kind of less active. And then in the summer seasons, then we would increase.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why there's lots of fruits and everything else coming in the summer as well, when we eat the fruits, we actually store more fat for winter. Okay, but also from an antioxidant perspective, it also protects our skin from the UVB rays. Okay. It's crucial to get the vitamin D, but we are, nature's way smarter than humans. It's thought of everything. Yeah. And the reason why I've got this year as well, this little thing here, you snooze, you lose. I can tell you now, with weight loss, male, female, menopause or not menopause, if you can win the last 3 hours of the day, you have a far better chance of losing weight, okay? Because if you, for example, if you were drinking alcohol at 8 o'clock at night, which most 45, 50 plus people do today, they'll have 2 or 3 glasses of wine, a couple of times a week or whatever their poison is. And that already has a significant effect on growth hormone, so you've got to really know, if you're eating too late, that will have a massive effect on growth hormone.
When is too late?
You try a minimum 3 hours, okay?
Before you plan to go to bed.
Yeah, you want to go to bed almost on an empty stomach. I developed a product called nitric oxide generator, and I developed that product for growth hormone stimulation, but it'll only release growth hormone if you take it on an empty stomach, and my God, you will sleep on that product. Plus, it cleans the liver out, and it cleans and it heals the gut. Now, the reason why I've got this 8 and 5, if you got low growth hormone, you got low melatonin, you're gonna have very poor sleep as well, okay? And also, I should say, if you got low estrogen and low progesterone in particular, progesterone is an anti-anxiety hormone. When you're low in progesterone, this is why females, when they're going through the menopause, become much more agitated. The hormones are really starting to become so diminished. And progesterone is so important also for thyroid function, which I'll speak about in a second. Okay, so if I come through here, because I know I don't want this to go on so long, but this is on menopausal women on melatonin. This was on 81 postmenopausal females. Okay, it was only 1 to 3 milligrams a night. You can get this in any shop in America and Europe. It's you can still get it. Which I take. You can still get it on eBay, etc. These hormones, melatonin, as I said earlier on, is such a crucial hormone. But let's just look in the black here. The woman who supplemented with melatonin, okay, they decreased their fat mass by 7%. This is, again, doing no exercise, no extra exercise, okay, compared to the placebo group. They were also able to increase lean body mass by 2.6%. This is so crucial. And also compared to the placebo. And there's also another hormone then which I test for. Very few people have even heard of this hormone. It's called adiponectin, which is also like leptin. It's released by fat cells, and it's very, very important for allowing cells to become very sensitive to insulin. Insulin is a primary driver for obesity as well. The older we become, the more toxic we become, the more stressed we become, the more resistant we become to insulin. Then what insulin does then is always stimulating the body to lay down fat instead of, as well as, trying to build lean tissue. But the more resistant you are to insulin, the fatter you become, and also the sicker you become as well. So just on the, I just wanted to put this in because when ladies are really struggling with weight, they tend to reduce their calories. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and what we know with that is it's not so much reducing the calories. What people need to really focus on, there's no calorie receptors in the human organism. Okay, we need to focus more on eating much higher quality of foods, decreasing the toxins, keeping well hydrated with clean drinking water, and nourishing the body optimally. Okay, because what happens, for example, and I'm just showing one slide, I've got hundreds of slides just on calorie restriction. As a female, for example, this was published in the Journal of Physiology, and they looked even dropping a mere 25 calorie a day restriction, okay, resulted in a significant reduction in inactive thyroid, which is T4 to T3. Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, it's quite staggering. Yeah, of course, if somebody's eating copious amounts of food, of course, you've got to reduce the food intake.
Yeah, well, you've got to be sensible. It's about balance. But does that mean then that if you reduce the calorie intake, which, like you're saying, a lot of women will perhaps try and do, then actually you might end up laying down more fat.
Well, you do. You end up becoming a smaller, fatter version of what you were when you started.
Yeah.
That's the key to it, because, and I'm going to talk about in the last sort of 2 or 3 slides now on what I now believe after many years of looking at the most efficient ways for losing body fat. And it's actually really focusing on gaining health and gaining muscle. Yeah. Okay, gaining health and gaining muscle. Okay, so I mentioned this briefly, and again, I've got like about 60 slides just on toxins and weight gain in my last book. But what we know is that the scientific theory now of how chemicals cause weight gain, it's now been established. The more toxins that are in this bloodstream, okay, the more, this is the side of the wall here called the endothelium, but the endothelium is really smart. All these, we are exposed to thousands of chemicals every day. As they're going through the bloodstream, the endothelium cells are signaling to the fat stores, lay down more fat cells, because we need to get these little nasty bastards out of the bloodstream and away from the major organs. Okay? Yeah. But eventually it becomes overwhelmed. They end up going into the brain, into the heart, into the kidneys, into the liver. But what they do, the toxins, they bind to gene signaling within the fat tissue, and they induce these new fat cells. So the reason why I'm saying this, as we become older, we accumulate more toxins. Our hormones are declining. Our gastrointestinal tract is becoming weaker. And now, as I said, trying to just lose weight through exercise alone is absolutely virtually pointless.
We're just much less equipped at that point to deal with all of these things.
Yeah, exactly. When you're young and in your 20s and early 30s, you can throw hand grenades at you every day and you'll bounce back. Now, this is a great slide as well. I love this slide because toxins also not only is the biggest driving point for obesity, but also all diseases, especially cancer, heart disease, and brain degeneration. This has been done in cells, and the reason I'm going to show you why I've got this up in a second. If you look here, right, this is very, very interesting. cells will always move towards a signal. Okay, this is a nutrient here, the green. The cell will move there and it wants to consume the nutrient. The more toxins in the body, the cells will move away from toxins. So what am I talking about? Look, as these, as all these shampoos and the, the lotions, the lipsticks, there's lots of lead, there's lots of gluten in these products as well, aluminium in particular. As those toxics accumulate, the body almost goes into a fight or flight situation. Yeah. All the anabolic hormones that want to heal and repair us, they diminish. And all these catabolic hormones, which want to break us down, they become very prevalent, okay? So detoxification is so important. Why I got this panel here, this was a 43-year-old female, and she has very high levels of beta-glucuronidase, which is in the stool. What that marker tells me is that she's not excreting toxins efficiently through the stool. And the marker also tells me as well she's not excreting estrogen efficiently through the stool. So it keeps coming back into the system. Now,
so she wouldn't excrete those at all then if they're not coming out in the stool?
She would struggle. She would be excreting far, far less than if you were, say, 800. Okay, this lady, 3,000. And if you was at 800, you're excreting lots of toxins. You'd excrete hormones through the stool as well.
Instead of getting rid of them, the body's kind of recycling.
Yeah, and as they coming back in, they signaling again to lay down more fat. And it also becomes you're creating an environment where not only obesity thrives, but all disease will thrive as well, okay? The immune system becomes lowered. Everything starts to become, it's like a goldfish bowl, which never gets cleaned. The filter.
And presumably those signs of aging will accelerate then as well.
Oh, you'll be in this is somebody that is with, like, this marker here, secretory immunoglobulin A. She's got very, very low immune function. She's got high levels of toxicity. She's got very poor pancreatic function. If I wasn't into this and I'd just be looking at this lady's hormones, I'd be saying, oh, we need to correct your progesterone, blah, blah, blah. But this will cause so much stress within the body that these hormones are going to decline anyway. Fix the GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract. Okay. And then now we nearly finished. Now this is so important as well. Okay. First of all, as we age, we have something known as sarcopenia. Okay. We lose muscle mass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the reason why we're losing muscle mass is normally most people become obviously more inactive, but the hormonal decline of testosterone, everything else we've spoken about, growth hormone, there's another marker called insulin growth factor, they decline. They don't have to decline, nowhere near as much as we do. If we are very, very vigorous with our strength training in particular, as this journal here discovered, strength training is like a hormonal therapy, okay? When you strength train, you increase testosterone, you increase growth hormone, you also increase muscle mass, which is the largest disposable system for nutrients. So the muscles become much more sensitive. You can get more carbohydrates in there, more proteins, more fats, instead of when you have low muscle mass, they go into fat storage and they don't go into muscle storage, okay? Now, what's also of very, very importance, we also know the muscle is one of the largest reservoirs now also for the immune system. Okay, so as we age, the more muscle mass that we can maintain in our bodies, first of all, the less likely we are to fall, because that's one of the biggest killers with elderly people. When they fall, they can't recover because they're so weak. Yeah. But secondly, it's a huge reservoir for the immune system. So it's so important. Now, this is very interesting I've got this this is on females athletes, because multiple studies have shown that resistance training can increase men's testosterone. We know that. But the lesser known studies, but equally impressive, have also shown that women's testosterone levels, whether they're 20 or 60 years of age, will increase quite significantly. This study in 2001, they examined 47 women. This was in the age group of 19 to 25, but you can see there it goes up to 60 as well. After just 6 sets of squats, they increased significantly their free testosterone and their total testosterone, which would have a big impact on their body fat composition as well as their mental well-being. Now, we're nearly there. Now, this is also so massively overlooked in the aging population, in that menopausal group. In my group, I'm 53 now. And what I've discovered, the older you get, you need to consume much more of a high quality protein diet. And for multiple reasons, there are some caveats to this, but I'm going to keep it simple. When you're early in your early 20s, 30s, and all that, you have a much greater hormonal melee. Okay, so it's the hormones are much more powerful at increasing muscle mass. As we get older, those hormones decline.
Yeah.
So we need more protein.
So we need to help. More
yeah.
help.
What the protein does, it actually stimulates something known as, I'll keep this, it's called the mTOR pathway. It's basically a pathway which stimulates muscle growth. Now, when you're older, your stomach acid normally gets lower. We don't absorb so much protein, so we need a higher amount of protein to stimulate, not only to ensure that we're consuming enough protein, but to stimulate this pathway. Otherwise, so on average, depending on body weight, a minimum of 30 grams of protein with each meal, of high quality protein.
Wow, it's got lots more than I thought.
Well, and you want to be up to around 50 if you, like my size, I'm 15, 16 stone. You need the more muscle mass you have, the higher the protein intake. And don't get caught up with the vegan proteins, because that's nonsense. I can say that with total clarity because I've researched it extensively. The only way the vegan protein can get away with it is if they probably consume an amino acid with each meal, which is called leucine. Leucine is a branching amino acid. That's why vegan proteins are far less inferior than the meat-based and the fish-based proteins, because they're much higher in leucine. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. And just to finish off now on the emotional part of it, because as people become older, you've either sussed life out or you haven't. Okay, and a lot of my clients are still, they've got their children to deal with, their grandchildren to deal with. They carry a lot of stress. I just wanted to show 2 or 3 slides to ensure that people understand that stress can come from toxicity, it can come from emotion, it can come from physical, or it can come from this kind of constant worrying. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, these studies here have shown that in men, for example, they were much more likely to die by 63% with chronically high levels of stress hormones, and women were up to 82%. Now, these stress hormones can be elevated on multiple causes. If you've got, as I said, chronic toxicity levels, inflammation will always elevate the cortisol.
So there could be things that you're not even aware of that are causing this cycle.
Yeah, root canals, mercury fillings, they cause a lot of toxins into the body. That can increase our cortisol levels. And cortisol is very interesting because cortisol will also interfere. Well, first of all, it destroys the brain. It really speeds up the degeneration of the brain, especially in the brain, a part called the hippocampus, which is our short-term memory. But also from a hormonal perspective, it will stimulate a lot of fat around the gut. And it actually sits on testosterone receptors and prevents testosterone from being taken up. Now, when I showed you earlier on, if you remember that little petri dish where the cells will move towards the nutrients, right? And they'll move away from toxins, so the body's in fight or flight. Now, what happens as well from an emotional perspective, when we're in stress on a long-term basis, the body goes into protective mode. Okay, what that means is you have huge problems with digestion. The last thing in the world the body's thinking about is muscle growth and repair, because as far as the body's concerned is like, where's the problem?
And it's trying to keep everything going.
Exactly. This is not time for mating. This is not time for healing. It's not a time for repair. And that's why then testosterone levels, male and females, will literally crash. You know? And also your ability. That's why people who are stressed for long periods of time are much more likely to become exceptionally diseased. Okay, and then we're nearly there. And just on the fat loss, you'll find that as the stress keeps constantly, you will absolutely struggle. And you can't exercise this out. This is a hormonal problem. It's not anything other than that. You can do 10,000 crunches a day. And this research came out of London by this particular lady. And what they've shown is that stress can fuel obesity, okay? And also what it ironically does then, because it causes blood sugar fluctuations. You then have these friggin' sugar cravings, and you're craving food constantly.
And craving the wrong food as well.
100%. Yeah, you're not craving broccoli and and organic apples.
Yeah.
And just before we finish, this link here between cortisol and abdominal fat, they find there's 4 times more cortisol receptors in the belly, okay? And what that cortisol is doing is stimulating the body to lay down fat there. And from an evolutionary perspective, that was a good thing. We weren't in fight or flight like we are today, 24/7, listening to the news, having all these toxins coming in, the work, the Wi-Fi, and all this stress. And this is why, we really do struggle today. And just before I finish, this is the last slide, I believe. This study here, because I want females to really understand that the emotions have a huge effect on the hormonal cascade. Okay, you can think yourself fat, and you can think yourself lean and healthy. And I always use this before looking at this slide. It's a bit like when you fall in love with someone, right? You feel on cloud 9, yeah? You
could take on the world, yeah.
You haven't swallowed a pill, yeah? You've created that chemistry. Now, when they piss you off and you want to crush them, you haven't followed a pill, yeah? You've created the chemistry in the opposite way, okay? Now, that's so important because we are creating whether thoughts that are changing our chemistry for the good or for the bad. And if you're always in that fight or flight thought, you are creating disease and obesity and diabetes and everything else. This study in Ohio State, which I've been a few times, they found that this was quite interesting, in fact, that, look at this, stress was also linked to a lower metabolism. They questioned women about previous days' stresses, etc. And what they found, on average, women who reported 1 or more stresses during the previous 24 hours, they burned far fewer calories. So it's almost like the body's starting to hold. And that difference might mean over 11 pounds weight gain a year. Okay, so the more stressed you are, also the more insulin resistant you become, the more muscle you will lose, the lower the testosterone you have, the less responsive you become to exercise. Okay, so it's so important, because if you don't get that right, then really you don't get anything right. And this is just, just to show how comprehensive some of the testing that I personally do. I don't just look at hormones. I look at absolutely everything. I mean, there's an array. I look at digestive health. I look at inflammation. I look at how well the body's doing with insulin, how well you're coping with blood sugar levels. I look how well the kidneys are functioning, the liver, what your vitamin C levels are, like we spoke about, et cetera, because if you really want to get to the root of the problem, sometimes, you've got to look under the hood. This isn't about selling blood work or nothing like that, because it isn't. What I want people to really understand, that lady going through the menopause, just to recap, okay, is pretty much this. It's ensure you have optimum digestion. And what's interesting on that, the more stressed out you are, the worse the digestive system functions, okay? Then you've got to ensure then that you have optimum nutrient intake. And that's why I'm a huge believer in organic foods and clean, filtered drinking water, and then the hormones, absolutely, the hormones will start to shift nicely as you're starting to eat better, think better, drink better, and then, you're looking at decrease the amount of toxins that are coming into the system. There's actually markers on the blood and in the stool, which can indicate how much toxins you've accumulated, and what is your ability of getting rid of the toxins, okay? Because the toxins are really becoming a huge issue with us, and then finally, then just make sure you're in a very good place emotionally.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that almost pieces the whole jigsaw puzzle together, and I'm always surprised on, how many people are really struggling, with their sort of, with their health, etc.
It's a massive thing, especially mental health today, and it's really interesting that a lot of these conversations we have, Phil, and this one is no different. A lot of it all comes back round to health and balance, putting the right things into your body, obviously, and being in the right place, as in environmental factors and your reaction to stress, how you deal with stress. Can affect so much.
Well, as you know, when you'll always get asked, what can I take for this and what can I take for
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
It's a jigsaw. Health is a
yeah,
jigsaw.
yeah.
You
It's
know?
never just about one pill, and it's never just about one thing, is it?
No, absolutely not. So, so I hope I hope everyone got something out of that. And
Yeah, I think that was really interesting. But I think it just proves there's certainly a lot more to look at than, just getting your diet right or your exercise, isn't it?
or just focusing on hormones. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
hormones. Hormones are really, really sort of interesting. They're sexy. They're great to talk about. But you know what? They're just a tiny part of the health jigsaw.
yeah, yeah, yeah.